Hello everyone, I hope you are all well. I'm sorry I didn't post any video last week, but as you can see this one is really long, so it took me a while to finish it. In case you have just found my video and don't know who I am, allow me to explain in a few words what the aim of these study sections is. The goal here is to create a community of people interested in learning Japanese, such as myself, so that we can analyze texts together, answer one another's questions, and correct one another. Because if you have tried to learn Japanese on your own for a while, you have probably already realized that it's quite tricky to find the answer to specific questions when you don't have anyone to ask. So I'm sharing my learning journey in hopes that it might help someone, and maybe I will be helped in return. One last thing before we start, I chose to upload the video in its entirety instead of dividing it into parts because I want you to be able to choose where you want to stop instead. Not only everyone is different, but we are also at different stops when it comes to our Japanese knowledge. Someone who just started is probably going to feel overwhelmed very early into the video, while someone who has been studying for a while doesn't need to absorb as much information, so they can go on for longer. What I mean is, watch the video at your own pace. If you feel it's too much, don't forget that you can stop and come back later. Now let's begin. Today we are going to analyze a song called Always With Me, Itsumo Nando Demo, which is the theme that appears in the credits of the Japanese animated film Spirited Away. I chose this song primarily because of its pace, which is steady and slow, and because no distorted or modified sounds are used. The fact that the only instrument backing up the singing is a lyre makes it easy for one to focus on the words that are being said. And finally, although the lyrics are poetic, many simple words are used, which is important for us at this stage. Needless to say, I won't be able to use any clips from the song in the video, otherwise YouTube is going to bonk me in the head with a copyright strike. But I will put a link in the description that will allow you to access a live performance where you can hear Always With Me performed by Yume Kimura. So you might want to give the song a listen before we proceed. Before we dive into the lyrics, let me tell you some more about the song, just out of curiosity. I found two versions of the story of how Hayao Miyazaki, the director and writer of the movie Spirited Away, and Yume Kimura, composer and lyricist from Osaka, came into contact. To pinpoint a moment of contact after the release of the movie Princess Mononoke, and only disagree on who initiated it. In any case, the partnership led to the creation of Always With Me, a theme song that Miyazaki intended to include in his subsequent project, Entotsukaki no Rin. After the project was rejected, however, Miyazaki decided to reuse the song by including it in Spirited Away, as he felt that its message also suited Chihiro's story of coming of age and discovering her inner force. Always With Me was awarded Best Song by the Japan Academy Film Prize and the Japan Record Awards. The English title of the song is not a literal translation of the Japanese title Itsumo Nando Demo, and we can start there. Itsumo means always or usually, very often. In this case, from the context, you can tell which of the two meaning is the most appropriate, but as if that wasn't enough, what follows, Nando Demo, solidifies this idea, as Nando Demo means any number of times. The literal translation of the title would therefore be something like always, as many times as it takes, or quite simply, always. Let's now analyze the song line by line. I will give you a few seconds to pause the video and translate the characters into Romaji if you wish. You can also split the words. And here is the solution. Remember that this isn't the official and correct division, it's just a preliminary one. that anyone can do even if they don't know Japanese, just by paying attention to the alternation between the writing systems, in this case kanji and hiragana. Let's look at Yondeiru. Does it look like a particle or an incomplete word? If you answered an incomplete word, you got it right. In the last lesson, I gave you some examples of common Japanese particles, and while the list was not exhaustive by any means, I hope it was enough to give you an idea of the form they take when appearing in a text. Not only would Yondeiru be suspiciously long as a particle, but it starts with nd. As far as I know, there are no Japanese words that begin with nd, or at least I've never seen one. This is all to say that Yondeiru is a grammatical component, which is linked to the stem that comes before, the complete word being Yondeiru. And the fact that we have a stem followed by the grammatical part that conjugates it immediately leads us to believe that the word is either a verb or an adjective. In this case, you can tell it's a verb by the ending. In the last video, I said that the natural position of the verb is at the end of the sentence, but here the verb is at the beginning. Why is that? This phenomenon is something that happens very often in lyrics, because instead of sentences we have verses, and often we have a whole stanza conveying a single idea. But let's move on to the tense. What do you think it is in this particular case? If you answered present tense, you're only semi-correct. You might have assumed that the verb Yondeiru is in its dictionary form since it ends in a U syllable, and I said in the previous video that verbs in dictionary form end in U. But Yondeiru doesn't just end in Ru, it ends in Iru. And if you remember, I also mentioned in that video some special cases related to the verb form te. When I see the ending iru or imas, I immediately suspect that the verb is in the so-called present continuous or present progressive tense. This is the one that indicates that the action is taking place right now. All we have to do is confirm that the verb is in the te form, with the iru added to it. To find out to which word a verb translates, all you need to do is to use the radical yo. I advise you to always use the kanji in the search process, because there are many words in Japanese that are spelled exactly the same in hiragana while having different meanings. And what distinguishes them in the text is precisely the kanji. And so we discovered that the radical yo belongs to the verb yobu, which means to call. It can also mean to summon or invite, but its most common use is to call. And if we convert yobu, which is in dictionary form, to the te form, we get yonde. Yes, yonde, not yonte. I didn't mention it in the last video, but I thought it's called te form. Not all verbs that are converted to this form end in hiragana te, some end in de. Likewise, some verbs in the ta form don't end in hiragana ta, but in da, and this is one of them. It is therefore confirmed that Yondeiru means calling. I'm now going to present the entire translation of the verse. There are many English translations of the lyrics to Itsumo Nando Demo, but none of them seemed literal enough, so I created my own translation based on all the others. Less poetic, certainly, a little crude, but more suited to the purpose of the study. Because of the particle that follows Mune, we can see that this word is equivalent to the word cest in the translation. Why is this? Because the particle no can often be translated as a possessive pronoun in English. You might even have heard the particle no being referred to as the possessive particle, and yet that's just one of its many functions. As I mentioned in the last video, the particle de is the specifying particle. It's the one that specifies where an action takes place or by what means it takes place. In this case, where does the action of calling takes place? Inside. So oku means inside. Be aware that to arrive at this meaning by research, you have to use the kanji, because otherwise the results will lead you to another oku, the verb to place. By exclusion of parts, Dokoka means somewhere, which makes sense considering that doko, one of the best known Japanese words in the West, means where. Let's look at the next verse. Pause the video now if you want to translate the verse and separate the words yourself. I will present the solution in 3, 2, 1. Here we have 3 words that might or might not be particles. The syllable ru is already familiar to us. If we assume that it is playing the role of a verb ending, we must link it to the stem that precedes it. Odoru, therefore, appears to be a verb in dictionary form. This is a verb either in present or in the future. If this was your reasoning, congratulations, because odoru really is a verb, meaning to dance. O is a particle, one of the ones I mentioned in the previous lecture. The particle that marks the object in a sentence. Yume is therefore the object of this verse. Finally, we have the word tai. It could be a particle, but it isn't. Tai is a verbal suffix that expresses desire or wanting, and so I'm obliged to introduce you to yet another verb form, which is the stem form. Putting a verb in the stem form is very simple. Just remove the suffix mas from a verb that is in the mas form. From there, you can add various types of suffixes to this form, one of which is tai. So what is mitai? It's a verb to which the suffix expressing want has been added. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the verb miru, one of the most annoying verbs in the Japanese language, because it can mean everything under the sun. One of the most common translations, however, is to see, and that's the sense in which it's being used here. We have already seen that Itsumo means always. We know that Yume means dream or dreams because in the translation this is the object of the sentence. By exclusion of parts, Kokoro means art. By the way, the term seeing dreams might sound weird in English, but in Japanese is perfectly acceptable. This is a tricky verse, in the sense that it's impossible to divide the words intuitively. All we know is the particle wa, which tells us that what comes before it's the topic of the sentence. There's no way around it, you have to get there by trial and error. I will save you the trouble by giving you the answer. Kanashimi means sadness. Kazoe seems to be the stem form of kazoe mas. This is the verb to count, a form that has been linked to Kirenai, which means not being able to do something or something being too much. The two together, therefore, mean that something is too much to count. That something being sadness. Keredo, which means but or however, shows that the sentence will be completed in the next line of the song. This verse might also be a little difficult for you, because most of it is in hiragana, but we can draw some conclusions just by looking at it. We can see that there is a division between sono and the kanji that follows. We can see that at the end of the verse there is a verb, and before the verb there is the particle ni, which means that there will be a word that precedes it. The only easy part is therefore the middle, but if you know that Mukou is a word, you will also recognize the particle de that goes with it. The word that, referring to something close to the listener but not to the person speaking, can be translated into two words in Japanese, sore and sono. The former is a pronoun and can be used in more general terms, while the latter is an adjective and must always be followed by a noun. So if you were talking to someone holding a flower, you could use sono in the sentence that flower is very pretty, but you would have to use sore if you just said that is very pretty. The same rule applies to the pairs kore, kono, which both translate as this, referring to something close to the speaker, and are, ano, also meaning that, but referring to something far away from both the speaker and the listener. Mukou can have several meanings, but on the other side, or beyond, are the most appropriate in this situation. Kitto means for sure or most likely. Anata is the version of the word you best known in the West, but it should be used with caution. The Japanese don't call each other you. They use each other's names and add suffixes to these names depending on the situation. Therefore, Anata is used when referring to a generic you. Alternatively, wives also use Anata to refer to their husbands. Aeru comes from the verb ao, which means to meet someone. In Japanese, the ability to perform a certain action is expressed by conjugating a particular verb to the potential form. Verbs in this form have the characteristic that they all end in ru, but not all verbs that end in ru are in the potential form, because there are many verbs that, in dictionary form, naturally end in ru. I personally find this form very tricky, so I apologize in advance for all the times you'll have to watch me confuse this form with dictionary form, because it's bound to happen. But anyway, I'm going to explain how to change a verb from its dictionary form to its potential form. If a verb ends in ru, you replace ru with rareru. As for other verbs, you replace the syllable ending in u with the respective syllable ending in I and add ru. As for the particles, de explains where the action to meet takes place, and ni marks the target of the action to meet, a metaphorical you. In this case, I think we can even say that the destination is a person, and ni is marking the destination. I'm not going to play guessing games this time. It's another verse whose understanding depends on familiarity with the words. Kurikaesu is the verb to repeat in dictionary form. Ayamachi means mistake, and it's the first time I've come across this word, rather than the more usual machigai. I've tried to figure out the difference between the two, but haven't come up with any conclusive answers. It can be that Ayamachi carries more weight than machigai, in other words, that it's a mistake a person can make that really affects their life or the status quo of their surroundings. Given that the verb ayamaru means to apologize, Ayamachi can also be sprinkled with a certain sense of regret or guilt. But in the end, I can't tell you for sure. Finally, Hito means person, human being, or people, human race, and Sonotabi means each time. Alright, I will let you split this one. This might be what you arrived at. The correct division will be as follows. First impressions. Our verb shiru stands out, clear and bright in its dictionary form. The particle o marks the object of the sentence. The particle no, it's also present. And these two kanji are the same, only the ending that is attached to them changes. So these words must be related. Now, when I see the hiragana I, as it is here, I immediately think of the I adjectives. Do you remember the I adjectives? The ones that always end with hiragana I even if the rest of the word is written in kanji? Well, this looks like one of them. I have a feeling you'll be able to associate the words with their translation even without me having to say anything. Let's see if I'm right. I admit that my translation is a bit strange. When I first saw the verse, I thought it was simple and nice, until I had to translate it. Proof that sometimes trying to understand is better than trying to translate. Of course, I'm obliged to do this in order to communicate with you, but don't be afraid to read without trying to convert when you're studying on your own. So, Shiru is well known as the verb to know, but it can also mean to be aware of. That's the sense in which it's being used here. Aoi and Aosa translate to the adjective blue and the noun blueness, respectively. When written entirely in hiragana, Aosa can also mean sea lettuce. As for Sora, it is the Japanese word for sky. The use of the particle no is very obvious in this case, for the color blue is something that the sky possesses. Tada and dake are two Japanese words that cause a lot of confusion. Just and only are translations that apply to both, but they are used in different contexts. Imagine you see something shining on the ground and you pick it up, only to realize that it's a stone. You would then say, "Oh, it's just a stone." That just would be translated into Japanese by the word tada. In fact, in many situations where tada is used, the words just or only could be replaced by simply or merely. Dake, on the other hand, is often associated with numbers and quantities. In the sentence, "I want 3 apples only," only would be translated as dake, not tada. In this particular case, I translated tada to nothing but, because I thought it sounded better than just, only, or even simply. Okay, what stands out? We have the word Keredo, which we have seen in the past, and which means but, and however, among other similar words. We have our main verb in dictionary form. We have what could be a verb in the te form. The particle wa is also present, marking the topic of the sentence. And finally, we have a word that seems to have a grammatical component, which might lead us to think that it's an adjective. It's not, and I will explain why in a moment. Here is the translation that I have put together. Let's start with Mieru because it was the word that caused me the most problems. Mieru can mean to be seen or to be inside, and that's the sense in which the word is interpreted in all English translations of the song. But on assuming as much, I discovered that it was impossible to translate the original verse into something meaningful without adding a number of words and concepts that aren't there. So it occurred to me to try translating Mieru into the verb to seem, because that's also one of the possible translations, and suddenly the verse made a lot more sense. Tsuzuite is the te form of the verb to continue. Michi means path or road. And finally, Hateshinaku is an adverb, the adverb to indicate that something is infinite. Hateshinaku comes from the adjective Hateshinai, which means endless. Hateshinai is an adjective. I've never talked about adverbs until now, so it's a good time to do so. It's quite simple, really. In Japanese, you can turn adjectives into adverbs simply by changing their ending. To turn adjectives into adverbs, just replace the hiragana I with the hiragana ku. To indicate that non-adjectives should be understood as adverbs, the hiragana ni is added to their ending. Of course, not all adverbs come from adjectives, but those that don't are very easy to use and identify. We have been using them naturally all this time. The word always, Itsumo, for example, it's an adverb. This verse is very easy to separate. I will let you do it. You can pause now. I will also let you make the association between the words and their translation. At the end of the verse, we have our verb, Idakeru, which comes from daku. Daku is the dictionary form of the verb to hold or to embrace, and dakeru is the potential form of daku. Dakeru therefore means to be able to embrace, and Idakeru seems to have exactly the same meaning. Apparently, both da and ida are readings of this kanji, but I have no idea what's the difference between the two readings, or if there is even a difference. I therefore ask for your assistance. If you know the answer, please leave it in the comments. The object that is affected by the verb is Hikari. So Hikari is light. Kono is the Japanese equivalent of the word this, to indicate something that is close to the person speaking. There is no plurality in Japanese grammar, so kono can mean this or these. Since kono is used instead of kore, we can be certain that the next word is a noun. Te is the Japanese word for hand or hands. Alternatively, it can also be used to refer to arm or arms. Ryoute means both hands or both arms. This kanji, ryo, is often associated with the concept of both, but that's just one of its many functions. Okay, you know how this works by now. I will show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. The word Mune has appeared before, meaning chest. The word shizukana is an adjective meaning quiet, peaceful, silent. The expression my chest is silent might sound strange in English, but the meaning behind it is familiar to us. It will be the same as saying my heart has stopped. Toki, when written and read like this, means time, hour, movement, or occasion. Sayonara, on the other hand, is one of the best known Japanese words in the West. Obviously, you already know that it means goodbye, but be aware that this goodbye should not be used casually. Sayonara should only be used when you're saying goodbye to someone for good, or when you don't know when you will see them again. Therefore, sayonara no toki means at a moment of farewell. The particle no links the two ideas. It's very common for the word off to be translated into Japanese by the use of the particle no. Once I show you my translation of this verse, you will find it very strange. So let me talk about some of these words first. The verb sumas means to finish, to end, to put an end to, or to get through with. But in this verse, it is in the potential form sumaseru, to be able to finish, to be able to end. Mimi, on the other hand, means ear or earring. However, when these two words come together, the meaning of the conjunction mimi o sumaseru becomes to listen carefully or to listen truly. Karada is a well-known word meaning body, and this word is signaled as the subject of the sentence by the particle ga. So the body can listen carefully or my body can listen truly seem to be possible translations for this part of the verse. The problem lies in zero ninaru. Literally becomes zero. My first assumption was that becoming zero was a Japanese expression, but after an extensive search I found nothing to prove my theory. This part is a mystery to me. Perhaps this becoming zero is related to returning to one's origins or roots, but deep down I really have no idea. So the best I can offer you is this strange translation. This verse has only 3 words, 2 verbs and a noun. Fujigi means wonder or miracle. Ikiru, meaning to be alive, has been converted to the te form, and the suffix iru has been added. If you remember, we saw a case like this at the beginning of the video. The verb ikiteru is in the present progressive tense, and it means living. Shindeyuku, on other hand, means dying or to be dying, but there is an additional nuance here. The verb shinu, to die, also has a present progressive form, which is shindeiru. So why isn't it being used? Why shindeiku? Shindeiku carries with it the concept of movement. In this case, I think it's being used to imply that is dying is not about a situation of actively dying, of illness because of an injury and so on, but that it's referring to, let's say, the constant march towards death. It's a bit difficult to explain, but I hope you get the idea. So, Ana means flower or flowers. It can also mean nose, but in that particular case, the kanji used is different from the one we see here. Kaze means wind. It can also mean cold, when to the kanji for wind is added the following kanji, which means something evil. Machi means street or city. The repeated use of the particle mo is not a pleonasm in Japanese. Both the particle mo and the particle to can be used multiple times in the same sentence, and it remains grammatically correct. Mina means everyone, and can be used to address a group of people casually. All of you or guys would be possible translations. It can also alternatively mean everything, as the word is not only used to refer to people. On the other hand, onaji means the same, equal, equivalent or similar. So I don't think I need to explain what this part means. It's the harmonization of the song. So the verse that begins the song is repeated when we enter the third stanza. The second verse of the third stanza is also similar to the second verse of the first, but there are some small changes. Itsumo and Nandodemo might sound familiar to you, because we have already talked about these words, and they are even the title of the song. Itsumo means always, and Nandodemo means any number of times. Use it here to give more force to the word always. Also, Yume has already been mentioned, meaning dream or dreams. So the only unknown word here is egako, which derives from the verb egaku, to draw, sketch, imagine. The ending ko, however, is a new one, so you should be able to see what's coming, right? That's right, it's time to introduce another verb form. This form is called volitive, referring to volition. Volition is the cognitive process by which an individual decides to perform an action. I obviously knew this. I didn't even have to look it up in the dictionary, of course not. But anyway, this means that the volitional form expresses the intention to do something. To change a verb from the dictionary form to the volitional form, you simply swap the u syllable for the corresponding o syllable and add hiragana u. In some ru verbs, ru is replaced by iou. Keep an eye out for the ou sound as an ending, as it can indicate a verb that is in the volitional form. Let's start with what we already know. Kanashimi is a word that has already appeared and which means sadness. The particle no connects Kanashimi and Kazu, and thanks to the particle O, we know that Kanashimi no Kazu is the object of the sentence. Let's move on to the words we don't know. Kazu means number, numbers, quantity or amounts. Kanashimi no Kazu thus means numbers of sadness, which in English doesn't make much sense, but it's easy to understand that the meaning behind the expression would be something like every moment of sadness. The following kanji is often associated with words, the act of speaking, and similar concepts. As for tsukuzu, it means to use something until nothing is left, or to do something until exhaustion. Iitsukuzu, in turn, means to tell something in the smallest detail, in other words, to make a complete account. Finally, yori is a grammatical element that compares concepts, although it also has other uses that aren't worth going into right now. Yori means more than, or instead of, or even just more, when it's placed before an adjective. In this verse, written almost entirely in hiragana, we recognize the particle de, as well as the word onaji, which has appeared before and means the same, equal, equivalent, or similar. We can also see what appears to be a verb at the end of the verse, whose ending is ou, which might indicate that it is in the volitional form. With a simple search, we can confirm that it is indeed the volitive form of the verb utau, which is the verb to sing. Kushibiru is the Japanese word for lips, which makes sense considering that kushi means mouth. The particle de is used here to show us that the lips are the instrument through which the action singing is carried out. Soto, on the other hand, means gently, softly, or quietly. The verse begins with a verb ending in iku. This verb is tojiru, and it means to close. Tojiru was put into the te form, and the ending iku was added to it, which, as we have already seen, puts the verb into the present progressive form, as well as the endings iru and imasu. The difference between iku and these two other endings is that iku implies movement. Toji te iku, therefore, means closing. Omoi, it's a well-known Japanese word, which can be related to many concepts, thoughts, hopes, feelings, the mind itself, among others. Someone familiar with the word might think that it is present in this sentence and that the particle de is associated with it. However, be careful, because it is not a particle de that follows the word omoi, it's a kanji that reads de. The word represented is therefore not omoi, but omoide, which means memories. We have already seen that sono can be translated by the words that or those, while naka can mean inside, between, center, during, or simply in. The particle ni marks where the action is taking place. This is inside the memories. Our main verb is kiku, which is in the dictionary form and means to hear or to ask, in this case to hear. The object of the sentence is sazayaki, as indicated by the particle o. What is being heard? Sazayaki. This is murmurs or whispers. The second verb derives from wasureru, which means to forget. Remember when I said that the suffix tai expresses desire or want? It's present in our verb form. Want to forget can be translated as wazuretai, but wazuretai can be made negative if we replace the hiragana I with kunai. Wazureta kunai, therefore, means not wanting to forget. I don't need to say again what Itsumo is, right? You have seen this word so many times that it should be part of your vocabulary by now. In this verse, we can see a word followed by the particle ni, a verb ending in ta, indicating past tense, if you remember from the last lesson, two words divided by no, and the particles ni and mo, one after the other. Let's start with the verb. Kudaku means to shatter. And yes, the verb is in a past tense form, but it's not that simple. We have already seen many verb forms today, including the present progressive with iru and iku, the simple present or dictionary form, the suffix tai to indicate a desire to do, the potential form to be able to do, and the volitional form. So I will ask you, what do they all have in common? They focus on who or what performs the action, but what about when we want to emphasize who or what is affected by the action? Then we have the passive form, or reru form, not to be confused with the potential form, which is similar. The suffix reru tells us that the verbal action is performed on someone or something. Kudaku, she's shatters y, becomes kudakareru, she's is shattered, because the ku has been replaced by the respective syllable a, in this case ka, and the suffix reru has been added to it. The ru was then replaced by ta, to put the verb form in the past tense. Thus, kudakareru became kudakareta, she was shattered. Konagona ni means in many small pieces. Kagami is the Japanese word for mirror. Ue, on the other hand, usually means above or top, but it can also mean surface, which I personally think makes more sense here. Kagami no ue would therefore be mirror surface. The first particle ni seems to mark a change of state, from something old to something broken into pieces, and the second ni seems to mark the place where the action takes place. This is the surface of the mirror. Mo, on the other hand, will appear in the translation of the next verse, which is this one. Atarashi is one of the most famous adjectives in the Japanese language, meaning new or recent. Ketchiki, which is the subject of the sentence as the particle ga indicates, means scenery, scene or landscape. The sceneries are influenced by the verb, which is in the passive form, like the previous one. Utsusareru is the present passive form of the verb utsusu, to reflect or to project. Utsusareru tells us that the sceneries are being reflected. Ajimari means beginning or origin, and Asa means morning. So Ajimari no Asa means beginning of the morning. This is dawn or daybreak. As we have seen before, Shizukana means quiet, peaceful or silent, and Mado means window. Here again we have the strange expression zero ni naru, to become zero. The official translation of the song compares this expression to the word reborn. Karada means body. This word has also appeared before. Mitas zarate is another verb that is in the passive form, this time in the te passive form. Mitazu means to satisfy, to gratify, to fill up, among others. Mitazu was converted to the passive form mitazareru, and the ru was then replaced by te. A very famous word in the Japanese language is iku, the verb to go. It turns out that iku can also be written and pronounced as yuku. In a way, yuku is the older form of iku, and it seems that it was frequently used in the past. Not that yuku has lost all relevance these days. As well as still being widely used in certain regions, it has a place in literature because it is considered more poetic. It appears a lot, for example, in song lyrics, such as the one we are analyzing now. What we can see in this verse is the imperative form of the verb yuku. Yuke, therefore, expresses an order. A verb is converted to the imperative form from the dictionary form when its final syllable, ending in u, is replaced by the respective e syllable. Some verbs ending in ru, however, don't follow this rule, and instead of ending in re, they adopt the suffix ro instead. Despite all the clues, it's not easy to translate this verse into something that makes sense, so this was my best attempt. So, in this verse, umi means sea or ocean. Kanata means beyond, on the other side, or far away. Mo is an adverb with many uses. It can mean already, no longer, again, another, more, or it can even be used to express irritation. The verb sagasu means to seek, with sagasanai being its negative form. Kagayaku is a verb in dictionary form, meaning to shine. Mono, on the other hand, is the Japanese word for something or thing. So when we put the two words together, we get something shiny, a thing that shines. And this something shiny is the topic of the sentence. Koko means ear. Itsumo is, well, you know.
After all this time. Always.
And finally, we arrive at the last verse, the only one in which the subject is not omitted. Watashi is one of the most famous Japanese words for I. Naka, as we have already seen, means inside, within, or in. So watashi no naka logically means inside me. The particle ni explains that it is within me that the action takes place. Kara is one of the particles I also mentioned in the extra condensed grammar lesson. I explained that it indicates the starting point, but this word can also mean because. And lastly, we have the word mitsukerareta. And here's something curious occurs, because there are two forms that are written in exactly the same way. Mitsukerareta can refer to both the potential form in the past, I was able to find, and the passive form in the past, it was found. And as far as I know, there is no way of distinguishing one form from the other, apart from the context. However, in this particular case, even the context doesn't seem to be of any help. Could it be that both the translations I've created are correct? If you know how to solve this mystery, don't be shy, share it in the comments. And here we have the harmonization again, is with this that the song ends. That's it, we are done. As promised, I'm now going to show you the list of the 20 more important words we saw, and the 5 most important kanji we came across, so you can take notes. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to know more about a specific subject, don't forget to visit my blog, because that's where I put all the relevant references, and many of them explain grammar points in great detail. I hope to see you next time, but in regards to that, I have an announcement to make. I will be leaving in a couple days on a road trip to Germany. Since I will be traveling by motorbike, my space is very limited, so I will not be able to bring any kind of device with me, which means I can't work on any new videos at all. The channel will therefore be on standby until my return, so expect the next video to pop up at the end of May. Until then, stay well and keep studying.